Jimmy, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me. I know it's late where you are, so I really appreciate you being here with me now.
No, thanks for having me.
I don't think I asked you in our pre interview, how did you end up in Japan?
How did I end up in Japan? I was pretty nomadic, working for Manala. I mean, I was practicing what I preached, and moving around the world a lot out of a carry on bag. And I was starting to look for home bases, I guess, or a few places to kind of settle down in, if you could call it that, around the year. And Tokyo was definitely one of the ones on my shortlist. And as I started that process, I met a lovely lady in Tokyo. And long story short, ended up here for the past 6-ish years.
When I was researching for this episode, I was reading different interviews, and each interview I read, you were based in a different country or you were on the road. So I'm really glad that you settled in Tokyo and you have your wonderful family now. And it certainly sounds like you've come full circle in terms of your traveling.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a total homebody now. No, it was quite a change when COVID hit, obviously, and especially with Japan being on the relatively stricter end of border crossings. I think that the start of COVID was the first time that I'd been in one country for more than 3 months for over 10 years. So for the last decade, I hadn't spent more than 3 months in one place without taking some sort of trip. And I was actually surprised by that. It felt like I'd been in places for longer. But once you just get in the rhythm of moving so quickly, it can be, yeah, 2 weeks feels like a long time sometimes. So that was a real adjustment, but I'm very happy that I was forced into it and obviously very happy. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned your past nomadic life. That is obviously such a big part of what led to you and Doug co founding the business. Usually, I would start the interview by asking you how you founded the business or co founded the business, rather, and the inspiration behind it. And I do want to ask that, but I want to think about a way of zoning in on a more specific part of that story because it is quite a broad question. So I think I want to go back to you, your co founder Doug, and three friends traveling across the US in a car with the need to find lighter travel gear. Tell me about that time and how that led to the founding of the business.
Yes, she's done his research. Okay, so this man, so basically, Doug and I met because we went on university exchange from New Zealand, were where we're from and where we were based, and we went to Vancouver, Canada. And long story short, found three other New Zealanders, and we all convinced each other that buying a family van, a broken down old family van, and traveling around the US or traveling around North and Central America really was a good idea. All in the van, sleeping in the van, living in the van, and we didn't have long to do it. So I mean, it was I think it was 52 days, and we did 20 something, 27,000 kilometers or 18,000 miles. And that was a lot of driving and a lot of moving. Um, I had made a controversial decision to use I don't even know. It felt like a 300-liter kind of duffel bag, bright red thing. I found out years later it actually did have backpack straps hidden kind of in the false bottom or something. At the time, I didn't know. They all had better bags than I did. And so there was just this ongoing kind of joke and shame and public shaming of me, hauling this thing upstairs and across streets. And I realized very quickly that had been a terrible mistake. And in future, I would do the best I could to travel only with things I needed to travel with. Because everywhere you go, generally there's stuff that you need. And so, yeah, it was through painful experience of being heavy that I ended up being light. And there's a lot of stuff in between that point and this point, which I can obviously go into. But I think as a formational experience, just understanding what it's like to overpack. If you've never traveled before, if you've never had to live for 50 something days out of a van with four other people, you don't really understand that the more stuff you pack, the slower you move, the harder everything is. And so I think, again, as a formational experience, that was a pretty important important time for me to realize that I wanted to downsize.
And when did you realize, okay, I need to do something different? I need to design my own bag. What did that experience look like?
Well, I realized I needed to do something different in about the first 6 hours of starting that road trip. That was, but that was 2006. And Doug and I kept on traveling all throughout uni. And then we moved back to New Zealand. We got respectable jobs. Well, one of us got more respectable jobs than the other one. But we kept on kind of self-sabotaging our careers and skipping off every 6 months to go on some last minute discount ticket trip around wherever. And eventually we started thinking, okay, this is quite difficult because we burn all our money and have to come back and get some job and work hard and then bail out on that job again. It would make more sense and it would be really sweet if we could travel and make money at the same time somehow. And that was 2008 or 2009. And then we started working on ideas. And we went through a lot of ideas, a lot of false starts, a lot of straight up failures. And, in 2012, one of the ideas we've been throwing around for a while, which was the ultimate carry-on bag, really, we started getting kind of momentum on it and met the right people and had the right, it kind of really understood what we were trying to build. And so then from when we decided to do that to actually launching it was a very short space of time. Something like 9 months from starting the proper design to being on Kickstarter. But, we started in '08 or '09. So, the overnight success of Manal was about, was about 5 to 6 years coming. Um,
I'm trying to recall, was this around the time when Tim Ferriss's 4 Hour Work Week came out? Did you read that book?
What's funny is I have never read the book, but I've been around so many people who have either read it or treat it like a Bible that I've basically read it. I
Sure.
understand everything about that book. And it's funny that we ended up following a lot of the paths that Tim went down. Um, some others we didn't follow. And it's interesting to see where that book has aged now and where it hasn't.
Yeah.
Um, on my understanding from listening to other people talk about it. But yeah, it was definitely a period where digital nomadism, remote work, whatever you want to call it, was going from the most hardcore early adopters to, oh, there's a little crew forming. We can find 10 other people on the internet who are doing this weird thing. Hey, why don't we meet up? And so that sort of run a business from anywhere vibe, we once we found that crew, once we found that tribe, to lack of a better word, um, that was when things really started moving.
You mentioned the Kickstarter campaign. I have a quote here from another interview. The funding goal of $30,000 was reached in just 6 hours, and strong interest continued through the month, with the campaign being featured on the staff picks section of the site. I have so many questions about this, and I know you've talked about this a lot in other interviews, but looking back, because it is quite some time ago now, what are your memories of that experience, hitting that goal so quickly?
Wow. Yeah. I remember being very delirious. So I was in Vietnam at the time, as was Doug, and we had a little crew of people that were helping out as friends on preparing the campaign. And, I mean, it was months of work to get that thing up and to get the product ready and the campaign, which are kind of two separate products, right? And I mean, I hadn't slept for days, maybe. I don't know how long it was, and it was something like 8 p.m. local time when it went live, which was morning, I think, in the US. And I just remember thinking before we went live, oh man, this could be anything. Like we could be sitting here very awkwardly amongst our group of friends with, two sales going through, two people pledging for it. Um, and so when it really, I mean, it started ticking up straight away. It was clear in a minute that things were moving. And yeah, I mean, I went from being deliriously tired to deliriously happy, and then deliriously intimidated by how many bags we were going to have to make and fulfill. But overall, it was just I guess it felt like some level of validation for all the stuff we'd been doing, like essentially behind the scenes for however long. and it also felt like the marathon was just beginning, right? That's the thing with stuff like Kickstarter campaigns is you make the sales and then the real work starts in a way. It's the public facing work. And so I knew that I didn't celebrate too hard. I think we stayed up answering messages until 4 or 5 and then just went and passed out and then got up the next day and did it all over again.
What are your thoughts on crowdfunding in general in today's climate? Do you feel like Kickstarter was very much popular at that time? Do you think it's something that more founders should explore when they're starting from scratch, like you and Doug were?
Yeah. The crowdfunding environment has changed a lot since 2013 when we went live. There's probably a whole nother podcast where I can talk about what, the specifics around that, but I think it has changed a lot. We've done 3 campaigns on Kickstarter and I think one kind of transferred over to Indiegogo as well. When we release products now, I think it's unlikely that we will head back to those crowdfunding platforms. Conceptually, it's fantastic. I would 100% still do it. And for so many reasons, one of which is that you can reward your most loyal, the most loyal people in your community. So by giving earliest access to the people who have been with you the longest, which is part of what crowdfunding's always been about. So I guess I would separate platforms like Kickstarter from the concept of pre-orders, pre-selling, anything like that. And the second part, for sure, we still do ourselves all the time. I'd recommend it to anyone. There's an art to it for sure, and a little bit of science to it, but as a way of kind of flipping your, if you're in physical products as a way, and even if you're not, anything that requires money to build, if you can sell it before you make it, that's going to be great news for your cash flow cycle and your ongoing financial health.
So you have this successful Kickstarter campaign, and like you say, then the real work begins. What are some of the marketing strategies that you used in those early years?
So before the Kickstarter, and I guess early stages afterwards as well, I mean, we call it a marketing strategy. At the time, it didn't feel like a marketing strategy. It was kind of it just felt right, I guess, but it was in person. So like I talked about, we were nomadic and we would just try and be where people were. And so there were certain cities that were hotspots of people living the type of life we were living. And I mean, basically we were making the bag for ourselves. It was the thing that we wanted to use. And so we just looked for people like us. We found them in cities or at events or wherever, and just talk to people. I mean, it wasn't marketing as such. We weren't going around trying to pitch people. We were definitely asking them for things. We were saying, "Hey, here's a sample of a bag. What's wrong with it? Tell us how you'd make it better." So really going deep on research and getting people's impressions. So that in person journey or journeys, many journeys over a couple of years was, I guess, technically the first channel. Then we went through the crowdfunding channel. And then I think from there we opened our store in early 2014. We kept it fully owned. So we only sold through our own store, nowhere else, for various reasons. And then after that, email became probably our biggest channel and continues to be one of our biggest channel. And from there, you start adding other things in over time. But I think from that foundational period, it really was just in person, pre-selling, pre-ordering, crowdfunding, whatever you want to call it, and then really doubling down on email and a bit of social as well, but mostly email.
What are some of the reasons for selling exclusively via the store? I'm curious.
Well, there are a few different reasons, but most of them come down to the full control you have over the experience of people coming through. And so we really, that's one of our big things. We really, really want people to have a high-end experience because we sell high-end product, and we charge a high-end price. And so we don't want to hand over the experience to someone who doesn't value it as highly as we do. And so by being able to see people as they walk in the metaphorical door and as they come through and as they grab their bag and as they head on out, and then as we stay in touch with them, that starts to build a relationship. Whereas if we just had dollars coming in from somewhere, or if we had, Amazon telling us, hey, someone bought, but we're not going to tell you who they are, um, that took away, especially in the early years, it felt like that would take away some of the magic and some of the, to be honest, some of the selfish enjoyment that we got out of interacting with people and seeing them come back for, another bag, or another bag for their kids, or another bag for their wife or husband, or whoever it might be. And so we didn't want to lose that at the start, and we still don't really want to lose it. I mean, we're opening up a little bit, but it really is still important to us to really to make sure that experience is a really high end one over time.
I think that is completely understandable. I know how important it is to the brands to have that close relationship with its customers. I read in one interview that you almost consider some customers, if not all, friends because you've known them over such a long period of time. And I have so many questions around how you're able to organically nurture those types of relationships with your customers. Why do you think that is?
Um, that's a great question. I think it starts from the fact that we made it for ourselves to start, right? And so I obviously not everyone has that luxury. You've got to make what you want to make or whatever. But I personally don't really know how to make stuff for people who aren't like me. And so it always starts with, what do I want to use and what problems do I want to solve for myself? It's like, what itch am I going to scratch? And so from there you say, okay, well, it's people like me. And then you say, where are other people like me? I want to go and hang out with them. And the thing is, even if I wasn't making the product, I would have been trying to hang out with those people anyway. So I think it was that it wasn't any, you know, secret plan or anything like that. It was just turning up, making sure we were in places where we could find people like us. And then, you know, I'll be, like I said, asking favors from them that, hey, would you look at this product and tell us what you don't like about it, what you do like about it? But not doing the hard sell, taking a long-term view, feeling like the relationship was always more important than whatever short-term goal we had with the product or with the business. Um, and I think, those are the people that we talked to before we launched. And then we had people who came in the door instead of as friends, as customers. And so then the question is, how do you kind of marry that vibe together with that original group? And I mean, it's very simple. You just treat them like humans. You're a human interacting with humans. And again, the relationship long term is more important than the transaction. Because, you can get one transaction, but if they never come back or if they have a bad experience or anything like that, then it's kind of a net negative. So I think just focusing on that long-term relationship, even when it didn't make total sense in the single transaction phase or the early stages, that really helped build organic relationship.
I can imagine as well when you, as a customer, or even as a non-customer, is giving feedback and helping you iterate on your products and then seeing that implemented in the next product, you almost have a part of yourself invested in the brand, I
Yeah,
imagine.
yeah, for sure. I think that was a huge part of the success, and that was a big part of the culture of crowdfunding at the time as well, right? It's you launch something, and then through the process of running a crowdfunding campaign, you would take feedback on the product. Um, Honestly, it's one of the hardest things to do because there's there's two sides to it. One is that you can get people feel really invested in the whole process and in the product, the company, and everything. The other side is that they feel very invested in it, and so when it doesn't go the way they wanted, or you don't implement the feature they wanted, or whatever, managing that the expectations and the emotions of it, to be honest, is actually quite a lot of work. um, Not bad work. It's just interpersonal work, right? And so just understanding where people are coming from, what they're looking for, how they might deal with not getting what they are asking for. That was probably one of the biggest challenges we hit early on. So it's an incredibly powerful thing to have people invested in the journey. And we continue to find that. And I don't think we would be where we are now if we didn't have that. The flip side is just knowing or learning how to manage that over time.
Speaking of challenges, I wanted to ask you about how you coped during the pandemic, given the products that you sell. I know you have a little bit on the website about it, but what was that period like?
Pretty traumatic. No, I mean, it was tough. I remember seeing, and I think we were a month into the pandemic or something. Actually, before that, everything was going okay. And I'm in Japan and stuff started kicking off a bit earlier over here. And I thought, man, this isn't good, but our sales are still okay. And then I think it was the day that Tom Hanks got COVID and the NBA got COVID or something. It was like something all happened one day and then it just went to zero,
Tom
essentially.
Hanks is the Tom Hanks is the canary in the coal mine.
He's got a lot to answer for. Let me be clear. And yeah, so we basically went to zero. At that point, I remember seeing a few months in or a month in or something, there was a chart saying, which industries or markets are up most and which are down the most. And literally the top down was travel luggage or something. And so that was a real moment of, oh, this is real and we don't know how long this is going to go for and we should make adjustments based on this. It was very unfortunate timing. We had a new version of our hero product lined up to release and to give people early access to and all this sort of stuff. And we had to decide whether to push forward with that, thinking that possibly no one would buy it in this time, the completely inappropriate time to be buying travel luggage, or just shelve it and kind of take losses for however long. And we ended up launching it and we pre-ordered and raised enough money to cover the production and got everyone out their stuff. And it was a crazy time, but it was just a reminder of how important community is, because a lot of these people who kind of stood up in 2020 and bought the version 3 of the carry-on were the same people who had backed the first carry-on in 2013 and Kickstarter and were kind of used to that community vibe, I guess. So that was a really amazing part of a not very enjoyable time for us, is just being reminded how powerful that community can be. Because like we were talking about before, people feel like they have some part of themselves at some level invested in the long-term success of the company.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just sat here reflecting on how important that community must have been during such a turbulent time when you see so many big companies going out of business and you have your company and you have this community behind you. And that must have been such an amazing feeling to know that you had these customers behind you.
Yeah, and it really wasn't something. I guess it's maybe a cliche to say it wasn't something I took for granted, but it really wasn't, in the sense that just like the first Kickstarter day one in 2013, before we launched mid COVID, I wasn't sure. Hours before we launched, I just had no idea whether this would be successful or not.
Yeah.
Whether people would say you're insane for launching this product right now. And so we tried to tell that story of why it was happening. And if we hadn't launched that, if we hadn't raised that money, it's very possible that the company wouldn't exist today. And so that, I mean, it can't be much more meaningful than that to say, yeah, on day one, our customers were the reason that we got off the ground and were able to make our very first bags. And at the same time, in 2020, 7 years later, almost exactly, many of the same people and some new people are standing up again and making sure, we didn't say, hey, buy these bags or we're going under, but in a way they are saving the company from a very, very tough time. And so, I mean, words can't really express what that meant to us. And yeah, it certainly refilled my tanks a little bit in what was a pretty tough time. And eventually we got through and started coming back up, and now we feel pretty good. But it was a long couple of years.
I want to switch gears a little bit while we still have some time here. You mentioned earlier email. Can you talk about the role email marketing plays in the business?
Yeah, I can. We've always used email as our primary way of communicating with people. And except for the times that we were doing crowdfunding, when we would write kind of public update, but of course those would be sent out via email as well, through the Kickstarter platform. So even then, when we weren't emailing as such, it was still email that was really working for us. And ever since then, yeah, I mean, we've gone through phases of doing more email and less email and different types of email. But what it comes down to is that it is the best way for us to send out a message and take back messages from people and communication. So we have been pretty consistent, at least since COVID was a bit of a break, but since sort of start of 2022, we've been sending out really regular emails and been so happy to see activity kind of picking back up. We do a monthly campaign that has a survey in it where we get lots of insights about people and have some fun with it as well. And hopefully other people are having fun as well, but we get a ton of responses from that. And then I guess another role that email plays is kind of as a free salesperson. So, we've got all of our automation set up. Um, and we've got, I don't know how many we have, maybe 8 or 9 automations now that are pretty involved and pretty detailed. And that's all work that we don't have to do, right? We don't have to follow up with people and say, oh, we saw you abandon a cart, or we saw that whatever, we saw um, that you bought this, but maybe you weren't aware of this product, whatever it might be. Um, Email is doing that for us in the background. And, because we're pretty careful about how we compose them and how we communicate all the messages, I think it's really successful for us. Um, and it frees us up, obviously, to do other work. And so, yeah, both as a kind of a community communication tool and as like I say, a free salesperson, working nonstop, it kind of works 24/7. Those are the main roles that email plays.
One question I had in my notes, and I really wanted to ask this before we run out of time, is you have this premium, high quality product. How do you think about customer lifetime value, upselling, cross selling, and how do you do that in your marketing, especially with your automations?
Yeah. So one of our challenges is that uh, the promise we make is that you're buying something that's going to last, if not forever, then effectively forever. And that's tough in terms of LTV, right? I sometimes wish that people were able to eat bags because then it would be a consumable and we could sell another one. So I think one of the things is, yeah, we want to make sure that people have everything that they need or could benefit from them on that first purchase, because we might not see them again for a while, with their wallet out. So just making sure that they have all of the options in front of them, they understand how the ecosystem works, if they do, then they often pick up something else that increases AOV, and that's great for us. Um, Beyond that, I think we've always grown through releasing new product, um, which is also challenging because we don't want to be a company that releases endless products for no reason, right? And so we're quite strategic and slow paced with it. But when we do release it, we really try and make it mean something. And I think people are really ready for it by the time we do. So yeah, and of course, once we release a product, I mean, it's going through campaigns first, and then we'll start feeding it into the automations and the flows and everything. Um, and then we move on to the next development cycle and try to think of what other products we're going to release as well.
We're soon wrapping up, Jimmy, and one question I always love to end with is what's next? Where do you see the brand in the next couple of years?
And it's such a boring answer, but I think we look pretty similar to where we are now. I think for us, it's about the process rather than the in kind of state. This is a long term company for us. We're community funded. We've got no timeline to kind of exit or anything, and so um, we just day to day try and give people great experiences, great products, great memories when they go out on the road and use the stuff. And so I think if we can just keep doing that, the result and the change kind of takes care of itself. So we just really try and focus on the process, and I think we've got a lot of improvements to make. But at the same time, I think we're pretty happy with where we're at, and hopefully we can just keep on nailing that day after day.
Well, Jimmy, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I felt like I really hit it off with you in the pre interview, and I was really looking forward to speaking to you again. And I just want to acknowledge you for building this amazing community. And I know it's difficult striking that balance sometimes, especially when you're running a business, but it certainly sounds like you and Doug have managed to do that. Where can our listeners go to learn more about Minal?
I just go to our site. It's www.minal.com, and it's Minaal. So there's two A's in there, Minaal.com.
Perfect. Well, we'll put that link in the show notes. And Jimmy, I want to thank you again for taking the time to join us today and all the best in the future with Minal.
Thank you.